Hello, welcome back to Bioenergetics, something like number 26 in the series now, and we're going to be looking at the pelvis today. And we've already done a little bit of work with the pelvis earlier on in the series. I think we did some pelvic rolls, pelvic rocking, and pelvic bumping, these kind of exercises. And before we get there, just to give a little bit of theory in understanding the body and release. When we look at the body and when we think about intelligence, the normal place that we think about is the head, like the brain. And certainly it's true that the brain has a lot of neural capacity, has, a lot of intelligence, a lot of capacity to perform functions. But something interesting to know about the body is that it's not the only area. The brain is not the only area with its own intelligence. And something else interesting to know is that the human brain, the higher mind functions that we associate with being a human and not a chimpanzee, are, I think, one of our closest evolutionary relatives. They all developed relatively not so long ago, like the last few million years. Scientists aren't completely sure, but the expanded prefrontal cortex, the frontal lobes, all this kind of stuff developed relatively recently in terms of our overall evolutionary history, which stretches back something like 1 billion years. So it's 1 million or two against 1 billion years. And other areas of the body have immense intelligence when it comes to just keeping us in a good state, physically and emotionally. Certainly we could talk about the heart having its own intelligence. When you go on more of an inner journey with therapy or meditation, spirituality, you often learn to start to relate from the heart, to feel and understand what's going on, the stories that are in our hearts, the feelings that are in our hearts, but maybe from a mental level we're trying to keep down, trying to keep suppressed, don't want to show our vulnerability or be too emotional from the self-image perspective, self-image thing. We could talk about our gut, our belly down here, instinctual reactions, defensive responses, whether we really trust something on a gut level. Often we override our gut feelings from a mental perspective, and often we may be so disconnected from the body that we don't even, are not even really aware of our gut responses. And the fourth area, if you include the brain for intelligence, is the pelvic area, the pelvis, the home of our sexuality, basically, genitals. And the pelvis is really particularly concerned in many ways with rebalancing the body. When someone, maybe you're out there and you're very stressed and you want to learn to relax. And so you might go to the bookstore and, buy some books on relaxation and read the books from a mental level and then learn certain exercises and try and do the exercises, guided relaxation exercises, this kind of thing. When you use these kind of approaches, or maybe you go on YouTube and look up relaxation and find out something about relaxing and read about it, watch it, all of this stuff, it's all being mediated by the thinking brain. And you can short circuit that, and that is really fundamentally what a lot of body-based therapy, particularly bioenergetics, is really about. It's about, not having to go through this filtering, interpretive process of mind, but actually waking up areas of your body so they can free you themselves. They don't need to go through the thinking mind. And the pelvis is the classic example of an area of the body that is really kept under control and shut down by the brain. Largely because of what's going on between our legs, sexuality, and the brain thinks, it's a really risky, dodgy kind of thing. We need to keep it under control. Or maybe we're brought up in a very religious kind of culture and, it's sexuality is really taboo in some way, or it's allowed to, got to have more Catholics or Protestants or Hindus or whatever, but so it's allowed sexuality, of course, but it's all kind of very rigid and controlled. And the net result of all this control or morality is that the pelvic area gets very tight. And what's lost is the natural intelligence of the pelvis to move. When you are, when you've ever done like pelvic bumping exercises or deep breathing lying down, sometimes you see a person's body starts to go into a natural release wave guided by the pelvis. Earlier in this series, we did something called the pelvic wave, a standing exercise, where the body starts to move. Maybe you experienced, if you did that exercise, the pelvis taking over. This is the key thing you're looking for. The pelvis starting to take over and the mind sitting back. And when this happens, the pelvis can start to take all the trauma out of your body, literally. You don't need to go through the thinking mind. You don't need to uncover all the stories of what happened to you. You know, you can do that stuff, but you don't necessarily need to. If you can get your pelvis firing like it's supposed to, acting and moving like it's meant to, a lot of release and natural freedom can come about doing very, very little. So we're going to look at a little very simple pelvic exercise today, which you do with deep breathing, and it may or may not do something for you. One of the other interesting things about body work in general and bioenergetics in particular is that as you become more aware of your body, you feel more of your body, you actually need to do less work, in the sense of working on yourself. Often very simple exercises done with deep breathing can provide a lot of release, or you can start to really become aware of tense areas in your body. And the pelvis is a classic example of this. Someone who's quite bodily aware can probably do this exercise for a couple of minutes, and it's like, wow, there's so much feeling going on in my body. You can sense the pelvis taking over. You can sense areas of tension in the body trying to move. And someone perhaps who's not so in touch with the body, it will all seem a bit like, well, what's the point of this? It's not really doing anything for me, you know. So that's not a kind of, caveat to just let myself off a hook as a therapist if not much happens. You know, it's an exercise. You can try it and see how you go with it. We'll probably do some more pelvic work later in this series. But that's enough theory, I think, for one day. And let's get on with the pelvic exercise. I'm going to stand up. Hopefully the camera is in the right place so you can see my pelvis. And you can stand up too if you want to give this exercise a go. I'm going to talk your way through it. Good to be on with bare feet and fairly loose clothing. I got jeans on, but they're not too tight. And stand with your feet about, shoulder width apart and the outsides of your feet roughly parallel. Take a couple of moments to check that. And if it's uncomfortable to have your feet exactly parallel, the outsides exactly parallel, you can flop them out a little bit, but not too much like a penguin. And then first of all, you're going to start to breathe deep through the mouth, right down into your belly. So I'm trying to access now my gut level when I start to breathe and speak and make a sound, and I want you to do the same. Start to breathe right down there. And don't be afraid to make a big sound on the out breath. You don't need to go into some mind-driven release thing, but just breathe out with a deep sound. Your knees are a bit bent. Breathing out deep. And now we're going to start to flick our pelvis from side to side, once with the in-breath and once with the out-breath. So it goes a bit like And as I'm doing this, I'm flicking my pelvis from left to right with an in and out breath, and I'm really feeling the pelvis and feeling my body. Pretty soon I can start to feel, I've got tension going on in my neck, in my lower neck, my upper back. So I can also maintain this movement and breathe also into those areas. It's doing something. I'm becoming aware of tension. Now we're going to change the exercise a little bit. Basically, you need to do this exercise I will do it for 5 minutes or so, with the deep breathing and with feeling your body. Finally, all of this stuff is trying to get you to feel your body more, so you're more present in your body. Now we're going to do it with some pelvic thrusting, a kind of going back and flicking forwards, maintaining this flicking motion, but going forwards. It's a sexual kind of thrust, this. From the side, it looks like this. When some people do this, their lower back is kind of locked, and so they start going into this kind of, wobbling backwards and forwards kind of thing. And if that's all you can do, that's okay. But if you can, try to make it just a flick. Dropping down with the pelvis and flicking up. Dropping down, flicking up. I'll take my hands out of the way. Flicking up. Ha, 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 ha. Once again, you follow the breath. Ha, ha. Breathing in, going down. Breathing out, coming up. Ha, 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 ha. This is a more overtly sexual movement, so it can bring up feelings, feelings around sexuality, around the times when maybe our energy was blocked. Maybe you start to feel very powerful or very sexual, and stories in your mind come up about that. That's the underlying notion, is that's not okay. See if you can stick with it through that stuff, Ha, 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 ha. Really going for it. Put a bit of music on, a bit of something with a bit of a good slow beat to it, something like that. And if, for example, that second exercise, the actual pelvic thrusting, felt a bit too much, like it's bringing up too much feeling, then do the side to side one. And with the side to side one, it doesn't matter which side you breathe in and which side you breathe out. You can swap them around a bit after a few minutes. With the thrusting, it's generally good to breathe in, going back, and when you flick up, breathe out. Ha! So you're giving it a pulse of energy, and see how it feels. Do it for a little while. Stay aware in the exercise. What's good as a general practice, just get a little bit closer, is to set yourself a time limit, like 5 minutes, 10 minutes, something like that, and stick to it. If you have a tendency to start the exercise and at some point, I just really want to tidy that, or I want to have a cup of tea, or this is not working for me, it's not working. Try not to go with that. Stay present with the exercise, breathing and feeling your body. Because in the first phase of feeling starting to come up, and the reality is most human beings are repressing, 90% of their feeling. So when it starts to come, it can feel a bit scary. So set yourself a time limit and see if there's something there if you want to get out. If you're trying to get a back door to get out of doing the exercise, set yourself a time limit and don't make it too extreme when you start. That's another way people set themselves up not to succeed. It's far better to do something like, okay, I can do 3 minutes. I'm going to do 3 minutes. Put a track of music on with a bit of beat, something you like, for 3 minutes, and really stick with it and try and feel the body. The key is to feel. In a lot of other body movement techniques like going to the gym or yoga, Pilates, feeling the body is not so emphasized. But in bioenergetics, it's the core. It's not enough just to do the position and to, I did the position, and I made my way through it, which some schools of yoga can get a little bit like that. Certainly in the gym, it can get a little bit like that or a lot like that. That's not the focus in bioenergetics. The focus is, your mind is immersing in the body. So equally important is to keep breathing and to keep feeling. It's not just about the posture. The posture is important, of course, but the breathing and the feeling is important too. That's why it's good to do work on your own, and also every now and again go along to a workshop. Maybe the workshop leader challenges you, says, hey, you stop breathing. You stop feeling, you went into survival mode, or you started to look around the room. And that can be confrontational because there's a feeling under that, but then it can help you come back. So check out for guys maybe teaching bioenergetics or this kind of thing around. Okay, I think that's it for today. People are still asking me about books you can read, and of course there's one main book on bioenergetics, and this is the book by Alexander Lowen from, I think he wrote it back in the 90s. And it's now this is the 3rd edition, I think, and it's now in its, maybe 4th or 5th. And that's the main book available. I'm hoping to actually write something myself here in the community a little gang of us to create a book, a download or a book in the next year or so with a lot of exercises in it, because I think it's a bit inadequate. You can also check out something called TRE, Trauma Release Exercises, which is a kind of copyrighted shorter version of bioenergetics. The guys that created it won't thank me for saying that, but that's a little bit how I see it. It's also good. It's also something that you can easily train in. People are also asking me about training in bioenergetics, and there isn't so much going on. There isn't so much going on. And for me, in a way, that's kind of okay. You know, it's the main thing is that you work on your own body, and then you start to work with other people and you pick up experience, you know, not charging ahead. The core with bioenergetics is feeling your own body, you know, not being too driven. Anyway, that's just a little bioenergetic update from my side. And okay, I hope you have a good day, and over and out. Happy pelvis.